Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Festive Fairy, and I'm sipping on some hot cocoa. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, deep yellow, fire red, Mars black, and green oxide. And of course you could switch those up, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'll be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes. Let me get them in order here. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 0 round synthetic brush. And I'll refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you could switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same type and size of canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there for you. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting our background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, and white. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pre-mix myself a nice neutral tannish gray color, and we'll be using that as the base coat for the canvas. So I have already magically pre-mixed my color so you can see where I'm headed. I'm actually going to use my medium brush to demonstrate how I got to this color. So this is it right in through here. So how I got there was I used a lot of white, and let me get that off my brush, and a little bit of brown and a little bit of black, and I just started spinning it together. So I'm really just looking for a nice neutral grayish tan that will be able to complement all of the bright colors that I'm going to be putting in this painting. So this is where I'm headed, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my medium brush away, and I'm just going to color in the entire canvas with this color. So I don't need to do any fancy brush stroke. I'm really just going to be painting it in. When you're using a color, a light color such as this with a lot of white in it, it will cover your canvas really well. So you don't necessarily need to do any specific brush stroke, because by the time it dries, you won't necessarily see those brush stroke marks, because it will have saturated or covered the white of the canvas really well. So using a circular brush stroke or a left to right brush stroke is kind of irrelevant. Only if you want to have a nice even coat with with an even layer, then you could use a consistent brush stroke around the whole thing. But as far as coverage goes, any brush stroke would work. And I just kind of go from top to bottom, but you could certainly go on the sides. You could even use this color and paint around the edges of your canvas. That'll give you a nice finished look to it. So just know that, you know, as you're going through this process, if you did want to carry that color over on the sides, that will make your canvas and your final art project look like it's nice and finished, and that it's fully executed and that you paid the same kind of attention all the way around your project, as opposed to just painting the front of it and then, you know, not paying that attention to the sides of it as well. And then you wouldn't feel the need to put a frame around it either if you have that color wrapping around the sides. And then once you get this done, you can certainly do a second coat if you need to, but you most likely will not need to because it gives good coverage. We are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint a border around the canvas. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are green, black, brown, and my custom background color, my custom grayish tan. So I do recommend before we start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer. So what I'm looking to accomplish here is just to get a nice kind of airy border around my focal point. My focal point is going to be clearly my fairy and my tree and my sparkles, but this will allow for the image to have that more vibrancy in the middle. So it's going to kind of darken up the edges. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using almost like a dry brush technique where I have very little paint on my brush, and I'm going to be using it in a circular type of scrubbing technique to get it on. I'll have it darker in the corners, and I'm going to fade it into towards my background color. So I'm going to start with a teeny bit of black and green on my brush. So just a very little bit. I'm going to start over in the bottom right hand corner because I know if you haven't done this before, if it goes wrong, good place to start is our bottom right corner because we're going to put a big tree in here. So if it goes too dark, we'll just hide it with the tree. So this will be your kind of testing ground. So I have green and black on my brush, and I'm going to put it in the corner, and then I'm just going to kind of rub it up in through here. And I'm just going to kind of fade it out into my background. I'm going to reload my brush with a little bit of green and a touch of black, and you don't need much black at all. The black will really easily overpower, so just a little bit on your brush at a time. Start in these corners. You can even kind of get it to blend in through here, and then just kind of rub it up. I'm doing a circular type of brush stroke to get this to kind of just blend out. We're going to blend it a little bit better in a minute, but this is just going to get us started. I'm going to do the same thing to the top left and right corner. So a little bit of green and black, and just kind of rubbing this out in through here. Do it again up in the top right hand corner. So very little bit of paint on my brush, just a little bit up in these corners. So now without washing my brush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a touch of brown paint. So I didn't wash my brush, I just picked up a touch of brown paint. You can even tap it off on your paper towel to ensure that you don't have too much on your brush. And I'm going to kind of encapsulate the exterior part of my canvas and bring it a little bit into these middle sections or the main dark sections like this. So this brown is just getting it to kind of flow into the center of the canvas. I just reloaded with a little bit more brown so I could add it in through here. And again, you hardly need any on your brush. Just a teeny tiny bit is going to allow you to get this type of foggy look around it. So once I've got this on, what I'm going to do is I will utilize my background gray. Well, I'm just getting a little bit more brown over on this side. I'm going to utilize my background gray to soften this up a bit. So I don't necessarily need it to be this vibrant or bold. So in order to get it to soften and kind of look like it's moving into that background, I'm going to now pick up a little bit of my background color with my dirty brush. So by doing this, I can overlap it a little bit into that fogginess that we created, and it's going to make it look softer and make it look like it blends in a little bit better or has a more natural kind of transition into the middle of the canvas. So just getting it to soften those edges, and I'm going to do that to all four corners. So I just picked up a little bit of my my background color, and then I just dry brush it kind of over that that border that we just created. And then when it dries, it's going to look really nice and soft and beautiful. So I'm just going over on these sides too, and you can keep layering, you know, continuing this layering type of effect where you do the darker area and then you pick up some of that background color and just scrub it back over it, just allowing for those colors to work together and overlap each other and really look like they belong together. If you overlap colors like this in this blending type of technique, it makes them more harmonious with each other and makes them look like they belong together and they're not disconnected. So it's just a nice fun technique to give us a nice soft border around our canvas. And then once we are done, we are going to be using our piece of chalk. Or no, actually we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So you can get your border done. You can even do another layer on it if you want, or leave it as is. Put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're gonna paint our tree. I'm gonna be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, green, and yellow. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna be having the top of the tree. You could certainly make a whole tree, but I wanna make it look like my fairy is really close to the tree. So I'm just gonna be using the top, and we'll put some good kind of branch details in it. So I'm going to be starting it with black paint. I'm going to put my branches in place and my pine needles in place, and then we'll do a little bit of highlighting on it with some green and yellow. So if you find yourself the center of your canvas, left to right, top to bottom, I'm about in through here is about the center of my canvas. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about halfway between that and the right edge of my canvas, which is somewhere about here, and then I'm going to come down about 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So somewhere about here is going to be where the tip of my tree is going to go. I'm just going to mark it with a little black dot so you can see where that is. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a tree trunk so I have a place to kind of build my tree off of. So I'm just going to take this and bring it right down to the bottom of my canvas. And I'm going to use my brush in kind of a sketcherly way to give myself the essence of the tree branches, and then we'll add some little details on top of it. So I think the biggest thing on a pine tree of sorts that we're trying to emulate is to have the top branches are going to be shorter. I'm going to have mine kind of coming down and out, but I want them at different lengths and kind of at a little bit different angles, so I don't want it to look too perfect. So as I do this, I'm going to consider this to be my trunk, and then I'm going to get my branches to kind of come out in different directions. They can come in a downward direction, they can come in an outward direction. Just as you're building it, just know that they don't have to all come out at the same exact angle. So if I've got something like this, I can have it going more of a downward angle. It doesn't always have to kind of flip up, so to speak. Maybe I've got a real long one coming out in through here. Maybe I've got some coming down here. So you can really just have fun with how you get these main branches to just kind of splay out from the center trunk. And I just put that center line down there and called it a trunk, but we're really going to hide it. I just wanted it there so I had a place to build off of. And you don't just have to go left and right. You can also kind of bring it down like it's coming down in the front of the tree as well. So now that I've got that established, now what I'm going to do is just kind of bring some little pine needles in a downward motion off of some of these branches. So I'm just kind of bringing my brush in a real messy way, bringing some little pine needles down from some of those branches, maybe thickening the branch up as it's going towards the center of the tree. And this is just giving us some nice detail on the tree without having to go full-on photorealistic. I'm just kind of giving myself the essence or the illusion that there's little pine needles coming off or hanging from these branches. And there's different kinds of pine trees, so they can, some have their their pine needles kind of coming down like this. Some have really tiny pine needles that you wouldn't even really see this type of detail. Some are just so little and skinny, but because I wanted it to look like we're kind of close up on this tree, I wanted to give the essence of the actual needles themselves kind of in a downward motion, but that's going to be a call on your part if you want to add that kind of detail to it. And then once I have that on there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some colors to it. So my colors are going to be green and yellow. I'm going to start with a little bit of green first, but first I think I want to pull this out just a little bit more. There we go. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to pick up green paint. Now some of your black paint may still be wet at this point. Don't worry about it. You can paint right over it or into it, and if it blends and makes some darker notes, that's great. So I'm just going to start up at the top, and I don't need to paint the whole thing. I'm just kind of looking for some highlights to the tree. So I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm just going to kind of bring down in a similar type of motion. I don't necessarily have to do the straight branches at this point. I'm really just kind of looking for little highlights of the green to give me a little bit more motion and information on the tree. And again, I'm bringing some down that center so it doesn't look like I have just branches on the left and the right. And then once I've got this on there, and I'm not covering up the whole thing, you can see I'm still leaving a lot of that black showing, but this is just giving me the highlights to the tree. I will be putting some yellow on there in a minute, but right now just getting some nice greenery, especially at the tops of those branches. And I'm really just going freely through this, like in a nice impressionistic type of brush stroke to get myself some of these colors displayed. And we're going to be doing a lot of glow dots and fun other informational stuff on top of this. So if this doesn't turn out exactly as you had hoped, don't worry, we'll be able to kind of disguise it with some pretty glowy stuff in a little bit. Now I'm going to pick up yellow and green on my brush at the same time. So I have yellow and green, and I'm just going to pop in a couple of a little bit brighter places just to give myself a little bit more dimension on these leaves or on these pine needles, indicating that perhaps they're being illuminated. You could put it even more at the top as opposed to down on that bottom right, because our fairy friend is going to be up in this top left-hand corner, so that would make sense if there was more on those. I think I'm going to add a little bit of black, more branch down here. I'm picking up black paint on my dirty brush. I feel like this is a little naked down here, so I just wanted to fill that out a little bit, and then you can keep fiddling with this all you want, adding additional branches if you want to fill in your tree any. And then we're going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, I just picked up a little bit of green at the end here. Once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, take out your piece of chalk, a little more yellow, hold on, take out your piece of chalk and get ready for your next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to draw an outline for our fairy. I'm going to be using my chalk. Again, I do recommend that your canvas is dry, which it probably should be dry if you did the tree last step, because this has been untouched for a little while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers and basic shapes. And by the time we're done, we'll have something that'll be nice and simple for us to color in during the painting process. I'm not going for any fine-tuned detail here, just some basic outline so we can work from. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to be drawing an oval type of a shape to represent the torso or the main section of my fairy's body. So I'm going to find myself the center of my canvas, left to right and top to bottom. So for me, it's somewhere in this vicinity. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up about 2 inches and over about 2 inches. So somewhere in this vicinity is where I'm going to make my first marker. Then I'm going to come diagonal from that down. Well, maybe let's do it this way. I'll go down about 1.5 inches and then over about 3 inches. make myself another marker. I'm going to connect these two with an oval type of a shape that is, I would say, about 3/4 of an inch to an inch wide. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to just kind of bring it around in this direction, and then I'm going to bring it around in this direction. So that's going to represent the first basic shape that we're going to start from. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circle which will represent her head. So I'm going to have this a little bit to the right of my oval shape. So I'm going to go maybe, I would say about 1/2 of an inch to the right, and then maybe up about 1.5 inches. So somewhere in through here. I'm going to go to the left of that, about 1.5 inches. And those will be the left and the right side of my oval. You can actually come up, I guess, from here, maybe about 1/4 of an inch, and then about 1.5 inches from that. So that'll give you your 4 markers to connect for a circular type of shape. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of going for something that we'll be able to utilize during the coloring process. It looks nothing like a fairy yet, but trust me, it'll look like one by the time we're done. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give kind of an outside shape for her hair. So if this is her head, I'm going to come about halfway down this right hand side, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a curved line like this, and then I'm going to cross it over or make it touch this oval. And on the left hand side, right about here, on the left hand side of the head, right about halfway, I'm going to start to disconnect this a little bit like this. And now this jagged line that I'm creating is now her hair. So I'm going to take my medium brush with a little bit of water on it so you can see what I just did by erasing these chalk marks right here and here. You're going to now see how I've separated out her face to her hair. So next what we're going to do is we're going to put her arms on. So I'm going to have one arm is going to come out here and one arm is going to come up here. So when I do this, I'm going to go just a little bit up from my oval right about here. Oops, that was a little wide of a line, right about there, and a little bit into the oval like this. So this is going to be the bottom side of the arm. I'm going to bring it out just a little bit past my oval in through here. This will be the top side of my arm. This will be about her elbow in through here. And then I'm just going to make a couple little marks where I want that hand to go. So I'll have like a little thumb here, and then her top part of her hand in through there. And then on this side, I'm going to have her, on the bottom part of her arm is going to come right in through here, and the top part is actually going to go behind her face a little bit. So I'm going to pull this up, come in through here. This is going to be the bottom side of her arm to her wrist, and then this will be the top side to the top of her arm. She's going to have a little hand out in through here that's going to be holding her wand. And of course, we don't need to, again, do any little fine-tuned details right now, just kind of getting something on there that will help us to color in. Now I'm going to put her skirt on. So she's got her legs are kind of, one of her legs is up. She's kind of in a flight position. So this, I'm going to make a mark for where her knee is going to go. I'm going to come directly below this part of the oval, maybe by about 1 inch. This is going to represent her knee. So I can take this and just bring it back into the oval like that. And then for the bottom part of her skirt, I'm going to have it right about here. So this is maybe, I would say about 3 to 3, well, let's measure. So this is about 3 inches, which is my piece of chalk. So almost about 3 inches below here, and to the right, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. That'll represent the corner. I can connect these two with a nice kind of wavy line. That'll represent fabric. And then I have, if you come to the left, I would say right about here in your oval, come down from the left of here and then down maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. That'll give you the bottom left corner of the skirt, something like that. Connect that, and then this will connect right up to in through here. So this is going to be kind of her rear end like this, and then it'll kind of come down and flow into her skirt like that. We need 2 feet. I'm going to put one little foot here. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a marker where I want her little toes to pop out there, and then she's going to have her her other foot popping out in through here, maybe something like this will give me that shape for that. And then I just have my wings to go. So I'm going to have a big one on the left hand side and the other one is on the right hand side, and it'll look a little bit smaller. So I'm going to come down right about in through here for this top of this wing. The point of the wing is going to be way up in through here, so I'm maybe about 3 inches away from the top of my canvas and 1.5 inches to 2 inches in from here. And it's going to meet her arms somewhere in through here. So I can just connect here like this. Think of like a butterfly wing is kind of how I've got this going on, like that. And then I have a curved part which will come right about here and meet in the bottom part of the oval like this. It'll go behind her arm, something like that. And then I have another one over on the right hand side, so you'll come about halfway up her head, somewhere in through here. And it's going to meet kind of like in the middle of her chest in through here. The point of this one is not as high as this one, and it's not far from her head, maybe 1 inch to the right of her head and up maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. So I'll connect those two, and then I'll connect this coming down like this and bring it in here. And then I just have a little section right in through there. And that's all I'm going to be doing for my outline of my fairy. We're going to use our medium brush for the next step, so you can put your piece of chalk away. Take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the base coat for our fairy, and we're going to paint her wings. I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors that I'm using are brown, yellow, white, and red. I think that's all the colors I'm using. If I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a custom color for her skin, for all of her skin pieces that we see. I'm going to be using a custom light yellow color for her clothing. I'm going to use brown for her hair, and then her wings are going to get that light custom color that we made for her dress, plus white as well. So I'm going to pre-mix myself a skin color and the light color for the clothing. So I have magically pre-mixed them so you can see where I'm going. This is the skin tone that I am going for. How I got there was I used a little bit of red, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of white. So I used all 4 of those colors and I spin them together. That was clearly more red than I wanted, so I'm adding more yellow, brown, and white to the equation. Red is very powerful. You don't need very much of it at all. So that's looking a little bit closer to what I want. I think I need a little bit more white in there to get it to the tone I want. There, that's looking much better for me. Touch more brown. And I just kind of keep adjusting it until I feel that I've got a good tone. There we go. That's looking pretty good. So I like to, when I'm doing skin tones too, to, not all the time, but especially if I'm doing a fair-skinned being like this, I can use my own skin as a nice kind of barometer as to whether or not I'm in a believable skin tone, and this is looking pretty good to me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to create my light yellow color for the clothing and the wings. So this is where I'm headed here. How I got to that was I used a little bit of yellow, a touch of brown, and white. And you can certainly, I'm just going for like a nice light beigey yellow color. You could certainly make any color you wanted. Maybe you want to add a little bit of red and make it a little peachy. So that's totally up to you, to, you know, whatever color you'd like yours to be. So this is working out for me. So once I've got these 2 colors in play, I'm going to wash and dry my brush because I want to do my skin areas first. So I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm picking up some of that custom skin color, and I'm going to go in for my face first. So I'm going to just paint this face area. I'm going to not be too caring at this point if I have much for features, but if you want to start pulling out like a little nose, you can certainly do that, and a little bit of a chin. We're going to be using our small brush to do all the facial details, so I wouldn't be terribly concerned about getting those perfect at this point. Maybe just bumping out a little bit of a nose is totally fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint the arms. So when I do my arm, if I have pulled out a little nose, it'll probably overlap that arm a little bit. So I can just leave a little bit of a gap between those two so I can see the difference. But again, mine might morph a little bit differently during the painting process. And then I'm just going to color in her arm. And if you, as you're going through this coloring in process of this base coat for the skin, if you find that you want to reshape anything, because I know sometimes drawing with a piece of chalk can get, you're just going to get some basic lines to it. This is where you can reshape, maybe pull out the bicep a little bit, maybe pinch in that elbow a little bit. Now that I'm going to do the fingers, this is where I'll just kind of think about how they would be formed. So I would have a little thumb kind of coming down in through here. I'd have maybe her middle finger popping out over in through there. I'd have her forefinger in through here, and maybe this little dip in here is going to be just the darker side, the underside of her hand. Then I'm going to go ahead and do this arm over here. This is where it's going to meet the hair, so I can just kind of give it some wispy type of entry into that hair in through there, and then I'll just bring it down to my elbow, maybe pinch it in a little bit at that elbow, and then bring it out a little bit wider at the forearm. And as I'm coming into this hand, and you can also use either a smaller brush if you need to, or you can put a little bit of water or liquid medium on your brush so you can get these nice clean edges. I've got the bottom part of her hand where her thumb kind of comes out in through there, and then the top part where her fingers are just going to kind of curl over in that direction, something like that. And then her little feet, I just have a tiny little foot, the edge of her foot in through here with her little toes sticking out, and then this one's going to be her ankle coming out from underneath her skirt. This is going to be the front part of her foot where her ankle is, and then her little toes in through here, and then her heel. So once I've got this done, I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and we're going to put the color for her dress on. So I'm washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to put my light yellow color on for my dress. And I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm really just finding where I put my chalk marks up in the hair. I will just kind of skirt that up into the hair so I've got an uneven line where it goes under that hair. And then I'm just going to paint. Oh, she just got a little bigger on me. No problem. Just erase it with your finger. I can bump this out to where her rear end is, and then just bring this all the way along where my chalk mark is. So you don't need to do any fancy brush stroke at this point. Your paint might be a little transparent or translucent, so it might look a little bit lighter or darker in some areas than other areas just due to the thickness. So maybe some areas of the paint are a little bit thicker, some are a little bit thinner. So where they're thinner, they're going to take on the color of the background behind it. So that's where you'll find the inconsistency in the color. So if it's lighter in some areas and darker in other areas, that's just because it's got a little bit of translucency or transparency to it, and that will all be taken care of with our second coat that we put on in a little while. So don't worry about any inconsistencies in the color there. Now what I'm going to do, I still have my custom clothing color. I'm going to do my wings right now. So I'm going to be using this light yellow plus white on my brush, and I really want my wings to just kind of look airy. So I just picked up some white, and I have my light yellow on there, and I'm just going to kind of go along these edges and just kind of pull this in. So this is going to give me this real pretty kind of translucent type of look to my wings. So I have white plus my light yellow, and if you bump into the arm like I just did, no worries. And this wing has a little bit of a different section to it than this top part. So you can have yours really white or really yellow or any color in between. Whatever is working for you is totally fine. These are just meant to be decorative, and I know that they're serving a purpose because they're helping her to fly, but they can be whatever whatever look you would like them to be. I'm just getting mine to be nice and transparent and translucent and seeing a lot of that background through them, so they've got a lot of air to them and daintiness to them. Maybe a little bit more white on the tip. I just picked up a little bit more white just to get that tip to be a little bit brighter. And then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm just going to put some brown on my brush to use as the main coat for her hair. But I'm having too much fun painting the wings right now, so you're gonna have to wait. There we go. So I'm gonna wash and dry my brush, and I'm gonna put brown paint on my brush, and this is gonna be the base coat for her hair. So when I do this, I'm just gonna paint it in the direction that I feel her hair is gonna fall, because my brown is got some translucency to it, and by using painting it in the direction that I feel her hair is gonna fall, I will get some natural little pieces of directions to that hair. So because it's a little bit see-through, I will start to build the dimension in her hair with this first layer. So I gave her a couple little bangs going right in front of her forehead, like that. And then as I come down this side in through here, I'm just going to kind of maybe pull out a couple into that dress along the edges. And this is going to give me the start to my hair. So once we've got this step done, we're actually going to use our tiny brush, our small brush, for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, just getting this all over her edges right there, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our arms and our feet. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my skin tone plus brown and white. So really what I'm looking to do is I'm going to add some shadows and some highlights to give these appendages some form, and to make it appear that her wand is lighting up the whole area. So I'm going to have highlights on the bottom side of her arms, on the right side of her feet, and then I'll have shadows on the top sides of her arms and hands and on the left side of her feet, left and kind of up under her skirt. So I'm going to start with my shadowy areas, which are going to be with brown paint to start, and then I'll blend them into the mid-tone, which is her skin color. So I have brown on my brush right now. I'm going to start over on this arm, and I'm going to be putting it on the top side of the arm, and then I just kind of blend it into the skin tone. I will overlap and blend that skin tone a little bit more in a minute, but right now I'm just kind of getting the start of this information on here, so we can just kind of work our way towards those lighter areas. So just a little bit of brown, and you can always use a touch of water on your brush too, again, to give you a little bit of fluidity. I'm going to put a little bit of shadow up here on her fingers, up on this side, and maybe a little bit on the top side of the inside of her thumb, like that. I'm going to go ahead and go on this right hand side and do the same thing. So top side of her arm is going to get this shadow. If you've put a little nose in there or a chin, you can work around that, or just paint over, you know, if that's not developed yet, just kind of paint over it, and then when we go to paint the face, you can totally you know, put something in there when we do the face. I just blend this out to that regular color of the arm. I'm going to put some shadow over here too. This is her wrist kind of popping up as she's maneuvering her wand in the right direction to illuminate the tree. I'm going to put a tiny bit more maybe on the inside of her hand. I think this is just kind of, you know, shadowed from her hand itself. Maybe some more on the top side over here with one finger in through there, and then maybe another finger in through here. And then, yeah, that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to put some on her feet too, my little shadows going on my feet. So this left-hand side of this foot, maybe a little bit under this bottom toe. And again, I'll be blending it in with the the midtone in a second, but just getting these shadows on right now. I'm going to put a good amount up here as it's being shadowed by her dress. So on this back side here, maybe a little bit, she's got a little ankle bone in through there, and then the bottom side of her foot. And if you felt that the brown wasn't dark enough, if you wanted more shadow, you could certainly, I think I need more down this back side here, you could certainly use a little bit of black as well. So that's going to be a personal call on your part. If you wanted it to have a little bit more drama in it, you could certainly use a little bit more black in your shadow making efforts. So that's looking pretty good. And now I'm going to pick up some of my mid-tone or her skin tone to make sure that this blends in well. So I just put it in the main area and just rub it into that shadow a little bit. That's going to get the two areas connected. I'm going to do the same thing on her fingers. Just making sure this not only connects them, but it also ensures that I have good coverage. So sometimes when we're working with acrylic paint, it doesn't always provide the best of coverage. Sometimes there's a little bit more translucency than we had anticipated. So making sure that you've got a second coat and that it blends in with the neighboring areas is going to make it look a little bit more believable. So I'm doing the same thing down on my feet as well. I just picked up my skin tone and I'm just kind of putting my second coat and making sure I blend it in with that shadow so they overlap a little bit and talk to each other as opposed to just being next to each other. So again, this is going to just give you that bit of connection between the skin from its shadowy areas to its brighter areas. And then once I've got that done, I'm just going to start adding little highlights on. So my highlights are going to be my skin tone plus white on my brush. So I have my skin tone plus white. I'm going to go on the bottom side of her arms, something like this. I've got this one over in through here, maybe a little bit on her thumb as well. So maybe just a little bit down in through here. I think I'm going to blend this up as I'm here just to expedite the process. So just as it's wet, you can just blend it up a little bit if that works for you. If you need to come back and blend it a little bit more, that's totally fine. So skin tone plus white, gonna do the same thing over here. And I definitely want it a little bit lighter than the skin tone, so that's where I'm using white. If you feel like you want it, again, even more dramatic, you could make it even more white. You don't have to be as subtle as I'm being. If you want, you know, more of a bright, make it look like it's a brighter light, then definitely add more white to it. Like her little fingertips are the closest I feel to the wand, so maybe they get some really bright little tips to them so they look like they're being illuminated by her wand. Maybe even this forearm, because it is pretty darn close to the light source. And then you just blend it in with your skin tone. So something like that. And then I got her little feet, so white plus my skin tone. I've got her little toes, which I think are really close to the light source, so we're going to make those kind of bright. We've got the front part of her foot is a little bit lighter in through here. Maybe her ankle bone in through here is illuminated a little bit on that left-hand side. And if you go outside your lines like I just did and I went into my background a little bit, you can always go around it with your background color to make sure that you've got the information that you want. I'm illuminating her little heel kind of area, or her shin bone. That's what it is. No, what's that bone? I don't know what that bone is. The little bone on the side of your foot. So something like that will work for me. I'm going to go ahead and add a little highlight on these left toes over here. So a little tiny highlight on those. And then just fiddle with it until you let it dry. See if there's any more adjusting that you want to do. And then we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So once you've got her skin done, you can wash and dry this small brush and just illuminate her toes a little bit more and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our fairy's face and head. So this will include her little hairband and her hair and her facial details. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors I'm using are red, white, yellow, brown, black, and probably my skin tone as well. So I'm going to tackle her face and her hairband kind of in conjunction with one another, and then we'll be adding her hair details. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to make myself a custom pink color because I'm going to be using that for her headpiece and some illuminating values on her face. So I have pre-mixed my pink. I have used a little bit of red and white to create this nice pink color that I'm going to use for her headband. And we'll use this color later on too for our sparkly stuff. So we'll use it in multiple places of the painting. So once I have this done, I'm going to be outlining where I want her headband to go. So I'm going to just have it kind of mid forehead area or crown of her head in through here. And I'm going to get it to kind of come back towards the back of her head, but I'm going to get it to start to hide in her hair. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a little bit of a curved kind of line in through here. And you can have yours as big or as small as you want. This is your headband. You can make it into whatever way that you'd like. We're going to put some stars on it in a minute too, so this is just getting it started. So now that I've got that, I'm going to use this pink to start giving her little facial details. So I already have my nose kind of bumped out a little bit. If you don't have a nose bumped out a little bit yet, you can just go about midway down that face and just give yourself a little bit of a bump coming out her face, something like this. I'm using my pink right now. I'm going to put a little bit of pink on her cheek as well. So I'm going to take my pink and just kind of put it on her cheek and rub it up towards the back of her face like this. You can even put a little bit on her chin if you wanted to. Now I'm going to pick up some of my skin tone to make sure that I have this pink blended up behind what's going to be her hairline. So that blends in through there. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown paint as well right now, just to give myself a little bit of a darkness at the back side of her face in through here. I'll do that just on this left hand side, just so it looks like it's got a little bit more shape to it. So that was my skin tone started, and then I just blended it out with a little bit of brown towards that hairline. Now I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush. I'm going to give myself a little eyelashes, so right kind of at the top of her nose, and I recommend putting a tiny bit of water on your brush as well, so you have little pointy edges to your brush. I'm just going to flick out a couple of eyelashes, which is going to give the impression of her little eye in through here. So somewhere in through here, just going nice and slow so I can make sure I don't overdo it. There we go, just a couple little cute eyelashes coming out in through there. I'm also going to do a tiny little dot where I want the mouth to go. So just a little tiny dot in through there. I'm going to wash and dry my brush right now. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint, give her a little glow part on the end of her nose. So just, oops, I had a little bit of water on my brush. Hold on, wiping my brush off a little bit more. I'm going to put a little glowy part on the end of her nose, so it looks like her nose is just getting illuminated by whatever she's doing for her light source. I think I'm also going to put a tiny bit of red on her lips too. So I'm picking up an itty bit of red paint just to give her a little bit of red on her lips. Not much, just a tiny bit in through there. So I think that's all I'm going to do for her face at the moment. I want to pull her bangs down a little bit, so I'm going to pick up a little bit more brown paint. I feel like I want these bangs to be down her forehead a little bit more, so I picked up a little bit more brown paint. I'm just going to bring mine down a little bit. You don't need to do this to yours, but I'm feeling like hers should be brought down a little bit further on her forehead, something like that. Yeah, that looks cuter to me. And just right over, there we go. That looks cute. And now what I'm doing is I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put some white stars on my headpiece. they're going to start as white. We're going to make them yellow in a minute, but I'm starting with white, and I'm just going to do stars. So little 5-point stars. So you can make yours in whatever manner that you want. And I just color it in with a little bit of white paint, a nice thin coat. There's one, and they don't have to go in the same direction. Maybe this one is going a little bit to the side, and maybe it's a little bit smaller or bigger, whatever you'd like is totally fine. I'm just getting them to cross over that little bit. And this one over here, I'm just going to have a little partial one because maybe we're just seeing the side of it. So have fun with making your little stars, or maybe yours are flowers or something. You can really decorate this, or just polka dots. Just decorate it whatever way you want. Once I get the white on there, I'm just kind of making sure I have a pretty good coat. I'm going to pick up some of my yellow, not my light yellow for my clothes, but just the yellow, deep yellow. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this on here so they look like they're sparkly and they're golden. I put the white first so this yellow would pop a little bit more. If I had just done the yellow, it would have been too see-through. So I did my yellow, I did the white first so we could see it better. Now I'm going to put a tiny bit of black paint on my brush and do a little shadow underneath my headband. So a tiny bit of black paint. I'm doing a little shadow underneath my headband. So this is going to give it a little bit of dimension, and you can even put a little bit underneath your stars if you wanted to. So this is just a tiny bit of black paint on my brush. While I have this black paint on my brush, I'm going to do little bits of darker marks in her hair to give her hair a little bit of dimension. So I've got black on my brush right now, and I'm just going to kind of put some little darker areas, maybe where it goes above that shoulder so it shows a little, like it dips in a little bit, maybe a little bit coming down into here. Not much, I'm just making sure that I have some darkness in there. Now I'm going to pick up brown without washing my brush, and I'm going to start finishing my hair. So I have maybe a little bit of black left on my brush, but I'm picking up brown in order to just make sure I've got these edges nice and finished, and then I'll go ahead and put some little highlights on in a second. But just making sure I've got a good coat of my brown. And you can see as I'm layering on this hair, even though we had that base coat of brown, additional layers are going to provide more depth to it. So now I'm going to pick up brown and white paint to give myself a little bit of highlight on the front of the head in through here. So just little brown and white highlights in through there. Actually, I think I'm going to make a little bit lighter color brown, not just brown and white, but I'm going to use brown. You know what? I'm going to take this back. I'm going to use brown and my dress color. That's going to be a pretty highlight for my hair. So brown plus my light yellow. So no new color here, just brown and that. That's going to be a nice, pretty, almost like just a light, when you mix them together on the head like this, it's going to give you a nice complementary highlight to the hair without going too light. So that's working. Yeah, that's pretty. And then I'm going to just carry a couple of little highlights in through this shoulder area, in through here. And you can, you know, have whatever color hair that you want. If you want yours lighter or darker, this is your little fairy. You can make her with whatever hair color you want. I'm going to put a couple of bright highlights over here in front of the face. I just picked up a little bit more white paint to give myself a couple of pieces of hair kind of falling down in this direction over by the light source. So like this, perfect. And then I would let it dry and do any little fiddling on it that I want. And then we are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put your small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish the dress and the wand. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are pink, brown, white, and probably the custom yellow that we created here, plus maybe some of my deep yellow as well. So I'm going to approach it like I approached my skin, which is I'm going to be adding some shadows on the side that is away from my light source. So my light source is going to be the sparkly tip of my wand, and then that's going to be the shadows on that side, the left side, and then my highlights will be on my right side. So I'm going to start with a little bit of brown on my brush, and I'm going to go on this back left hand side. So this is going to be her back in through here, and I'm just going to kind of put my shadow on, and then I can blend it into the main color of the dress. So I know on this side in through here, I want the skirt to look like it's got a little bit of movement and maybe around her rear end in through here, so I can kind of curve my shadow going up that that section, and over on here I can kind of pull this shadow, rub it, fade it into like her waist area, something like this. So that'll give her a little bit of contour on her body. I'm going to put a little bit more brown on my brush to put some nice shadow on this back side of the dress in through here. You could also use a little bit of black on your brush if you wanted, again, if you wanted that shadow to be a little bit darker and have a little bit more drama to it. You could certainly do that. And this side, I'm just going to kind of pull it up like where I feel the movement of the skirt would go. I think I'm actually going to put a tiny bit of a shadow underneath too. Give myself like a little underside to this skirt like this. That'll give some nice dimension. Maybe I'm going to use a little black. I didn't say I was going to use black, but I am now. I just put a little bit of black on my brush. So this underside would set itself apart. Yeah, I like that. These little kind of details I like to just throw in there where it's going to add that bit of extra dimension to it. Maybe a touch of that darkness up in through here, giving myself as much drama as I want. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash my brush because I want to fade that brown into maybe a little bit more of a mid-tone. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of deep yellow on my brush and get this shadow to go a little bit brighter in color, fading into that light section. So this is deep yellow that I'm just taking and kind of going over my shadow a little bit and rubbing it more into the main section. Now I'm going to pick up my light yellow color and get that deep yellow to blend into this mid or to the base color that we put on initially. So this is my my base light yellow that we created earlier, just getting it to blend into that deep yellow. Going to do the same thing on the underside in through here. Again, just so everything blends and looks nice together. Putting a tiny bit more deep yellow on my brush for this rear end part, just so we can get that. Yeah, that looks good. Something like that. Now I'm going to start adding highlights. So my highlight is going to be over here on the right hand side. I'm going to pick up white plus my light yellow, and I'm going to start my highlight over here on her knee, in through here. And while I'm on this part, because this is like her leg kind of kicked up a little bit, I want to bring this over the top of her thigh into and past her little belly area here. So this is going to, again, show you a little bit more movement and show you where that leg kind of kicks up a little bit. And then this has got to blend down and around her legs. So I'm going to just get this to kind of blend out, down in through here. I'm going to add a little bit more white on my brush to get a nice, vibrant look on the front of this skirt in through here. And when you're doing fabric, it doesn't always have, I don't have to have it so smooth of a gradient from left to right. The fabric can ripple. So that's where these dark spots and light spots come into play. So if it's got a little bit dark here and light here and dark here, that just makes the fabric look like it's rippling, which gives a great effect. But I definitely want this knee to be nice and bright. I just added a little bit more white to my brush, and then I'm just going to make sure that it fades down. And if I needed to pick up any more of that light yellow, I certainly would. I'm going to put a tiny bit of highlight on her chest as well. Just want to make sure that I get this blended in. That's looking so pretty. I wish that she came and lit my Christmas tree. I would be delighted if she just showed up and was like, hey, let me light your Christmas tree. I'm going to put a little bit of lightness in through here. And again, you could even bump this out a little bit if you wanted that chest area to look a little bit fuller, and then just fade this back into that belly area. And then make any little, oh, I need my wand. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put that pink color on my brush. So washing and drying my brush, putting pink on. I'm going to go from her hand to a little bit above my tree. So that's about where I'm headed with it in my tree. I'm just drawing a diagonal line from inside her hand, or from, you know, wherever you feel would be appropriate. And then just drawing my diagonal line. Of course, I'm slowing down so I can make it as straight as I can. If it's not straight, we can hide it with sparkles in a minute. So that's looking pretty good. And if you bump into your hand like I just did, you can certainly adjust it with sparkles or whatever. So now I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up some brown to do a little shadow on this right-hand side of my wand. And of course, you could use your smaller brush too to do this. That might, I'm trying to keep my hand steady here, which is, I'm switching to my small brush. Sorry. I'm trying to get a small line and my hand is a little too shaky right now, so I just switched to my small brush and I'm just going right down this right hand side. So that's, you know, for me, I definitely have a shaky hand. So when I'm doing these smaller lines like this, I like to make sure that I put a little bit of moisture on my brush, and I steady myself by resting my hand on my canvas, and then I would just kind of keep going back and forth to get it as straight as I want and do any little adjusting. And then we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your wand on here, you can put your medium or your small brush, do whatever you need to, but get your medium brush ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint sparkles. So I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are white, yellow, pink, and green. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start first with white, and I'm going to put everything in place, and then I'm going to come back and layer on my colorful aspects of it. So my light yellow, light green, my pink, which light red, and then we'll put more sparkles on top of that. So we want it to be really alive and have a lot of movement and motion in it. So I'm going to start with white paint. As I'm going through this process, I want it to kind of be fluid, and I don't necessarily want it to look really big and chunky. So if at any time I want to have kind of transparent or translucency to any of these, I can put a little bit of water or liquid medium on my brush. So for me, I know because I don't have liquid medium on my station, I will sometimes just dip my brush in some water and then just tap it on my paper towel, and that'll give me more of a fluid motion to it. So I definitely want my nucleus of my sparkles to be around the tip of my my wand, and then I'm going to have lots of different size ones throughout the rest of the canvas. So I'm going to start in through here at the tip of my tree, and I'm just going to give myself this big, huge, spirally type of mark or display of brightness. So I, again, want some of it to look transparent or translucent, so I'm going to skip it along. I don't need to have a solid line. I want it to have lots of movement and motion to it, so you can see some of the tree underneath it. I want a bright center to it, and this is going to be the one that has the most probably white in it. All of the other ones will have more colors and stuff in them, but I wanted this one to be nice and vibrant and have a lot to it. And then once I've got that big one on there, then I just start making other ones throughout my area. So maybe I have a big one in my tree. So I start in the center of my sparkle mark. I make a little, you know, nucleus to it, and then just spin my brush outward. And you can have as many as you want, as few as you want, as big as you want. They can overlap objects, so feel free to make them as many as you want. I'm also going to do a lot of little dots. So at any time you want there to just be like a little sparkle or glow mark, you can just put little polka dots. You can put smaller, just little representations of circular marks. You can, you know, have it as glowy or as sparkly as you want. I'm putting them everywhere. I'm going to put some on my sides. I'm going to put, you know, lots in through here so I can do some smaller ones, just little dots with my tip of my brush. I'm going to have some in through here. I'm going to have them in various tones. So this is why I'm putting white on first, because I want those colors as I start building them with the other, when I'm putting on my green and my pink and my yellow, I want them to have some vibrancy to them. So because I have this gray background, doing this in a white version first is going to allow those colors to really pop and for the viewer to understand that, you know, they have life and vibrancy. As I get to certain objects, maybe I just want to show part of it, like the other part is behind my wing. Maybe I just want to have some small ones. So again, just doing them in different sizes is going to allow you to have that diversity. And this is a fantasy style painting, so nothing in here has to look super real. You just make it into whatever is visually appealing to you. I'm just continuing to make these partial ones up towards the top so it looks like they're kind of just going out into wherever she is coming or going from. So feel free to make as many as you want. I'm feeling like this is kind of like Van Gogh's Starry Night-esque with these circular kind of representational lights of sorts. So you can, you know, I'm just kind of going through this, making a whole bunch of, maybe we've got a couple of partial ones or smaller ones in through here. And then once I've got my kind of footprint as to where I want them, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some color to them. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to start with my pink ones. So I already have my pink made, so I'm going to be using pink for this guy, my big one in through here. And I don't want it to take up all my white, so I'm just going to kind of utilize some of my pink and just kind of dispense it sparingly throughout this one in through here. And I'm just going for a nice glow effect. You can really have yours in whatever way that you want. You can even, as you've got, you know, this pink on your brush, you could even go outside of where you've already put some of these lighter areas. So again, I'm utilizing it with the existing white that I already have on there, and we're going to put, once we do this layer of the pink, we're going to come back and put little sparkle dots in the middle. So I'm doing like a layering kind of process. I think I want my pink to be a little bit darker. I just added a touch more red to my pink. I want it a little bit darker. Yeah, there we go. It was a little bit too pale for me, so I just added a touch more red into it so it got a little bit more vibrant. So that's another thing. As you're going through your process, if your pink isn't pink enough, you just add, or dark enough, just add a little bit of red to it, and that'll get it a little bit darker, and you can, you know, have fun with how, you know, whatever that color palette is that's speaking to you. And as you're going through these, you don't have to do every single one exactly in the same place as I'm doing them. I'm just kind of having fun with choosing some of them to be pink, some of them are going to be yellow, some of them are going to be green. So have as much fun. Maybe you want all of yours to be pink. It's going to be totally up to you, whatever your color palette is that you want. So that's looking good for my pinks. So maybe this one's a little pink too. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put some yellow and white. So this is going to be my deep yellow, and white. So I'm going to actually use both of these colors on my brush at the same time. So it kind of gives me an assortment of my yellow. Maybe you just want to use yellow. It's totally up to you. And I'm just going to kind of go ahead and do some of these with yellow and white. And again, you can add them wherever you want. I'm going to put some little glow in my tree in through here, maybe utilizing this on a lot of areas because I'm digging it right now. Sometimes when you go into a color, it's like, oh yeah, that's the color I've been searching for. I totally want that to be all over my canvas. So you feel free to put it wherever you want. And maybe you want multicolored ones. I might come back and put pink in with some of these yellow ones. So again, it's going to be up to you. I think that's good for my yellow ones. I'm going to go into green and white now. So again, same thing what I just did with the yellow and white. I'm going to be using green and white on my brush at the same time. And you don't need a ton, just green and white, and then go ahead and put as many of these little glow spirals as you want. And you can see I'm putting it on top of existing some of those existing ones that I had already done. So that's going to just, that white underneath is going to allow for these colors to really just pop and get them to go nice and vibrant and have lots of life to them. And then once I've got this done, I'm going to accentuate my light source and then put little glow dots inside some of these colored ones to make them pop even more. So just put in little bits more green. Maybe I got a couple of little green ones in here. That's looking pretty good. All right, so now I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and, did I do this one last green? I'm going to make that center come alive. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to be using white paint, and I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of little polka dots, and I'm going to pull out like these little starburst kind of marks. So this is just white, and I'm using it in 2 different brush strokes. So I'm pulling out these little starburst marks that are not all just connected to the center. So you can have them in different lengths coming out of here. And I'm also going to do lots of little, almost like explosive little dots throughout this area, and this is just making it look like it's got lots of energy, and it's creating the luminescent, you know, information in that painting or in that area. And then I'm going to just use this white and maybe give some of these other glow dots a little nucleus. So you can just pop that little white right in the center, and it's going to give them more of a little vibrant glow. And you don't have to do it to all of them, but you know, I find that when I start doing these little glowy things that my brush takes over and it puts as many glow dots in as it wants. But you can certainly, if you can control yourself, you don't have to put them in all of them. And then once you're done, we're going to be using our tiny brush for the next step, our small brush. So you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we're on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I think I'm going bottom left on this one with black paint. I like to sign my initials, but you could certainly sign your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you want for your identifying mark to be is totally fine, because it's your painting, so you get to sign it however you would like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very magical holiday image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.